Frank Rieger is a hacker in Germany and one of the most well-known spokesmen for the Chaos Computer Club. This organization is unlike anything we have in the US, unlike anything I've seen anywhere else in the world. It's computer hackers who've taken an interest in figuring out how to be activists for policy decisions in government that affect technology, especially computers, privacy, data, all the things that actually matter but get thrown by the wayside by our corporate overlords. It's amazing getting to hang out with these guys. They're doing something we haven't figured out how to accomplish, how to create a lobby. They've been very effective. Talking to Frank about what they've accomplished over the years and the things they've worked on is both inspiring and terrifying because they have had wins, but also been losing ground at times as well. And it's just this sort of continual war of escalation, trying to keep governments from becoming surveillance states, keep them from violating the sensibilities that we've had to develop in hard-fought wars in the past with authoritarian dictatorships and other despots who've taken control. They keep coming back in different forms. I wish we could find a way to be so engaged here in the US. Personally, I started going to Germany for their event 25 years ago or something. I remember the first time I went with some American hackers to the Chaos Computer Congress. It happens every year in Germany between Christmas and New Year's. It'll blow your mind. These hackers are incredible. It's inspiring to see what they can do. I think as kind of a backlash to the very structured education program in Germany and Europe at large, the misfits, they go hard. And I've seen them do incredible things I thought were impossible at times. If it's of any interest to you to go to a hacker convention, this is the one to go to. I think you'll see that Frank is a very level person. He's smart, well-spoken, intelligent. He's standing up for what's right. I'm thrilled to be sharing with you.
I've never met anyone like him.
He could hack anybody's phone in a matter of minutes. Who is that guy? Who can do that?
Thomas is the most interesting man in the world.
He's one of my favorite people on the planet.
Inventor.
Wicked smart.
The master of cutting corners.
If you had a dead body in your trunk, who would you call?
He would get arrested immediately in a lineup.
I stood in line to get his autograph.
You know, his mouth can barely keep up to his brain.
I don't actually know what Pablos does.
A hacker magician.
Man of the future. 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 Future.
You don't know that much about me, but I grew up in Alaska. I had one of the first Apple IIs. And so nobody had any idea what this thing was for and had to learn the hard way. You basically just crash it and reboot it. There were no books. There was nobody to learn from. I just had, I knew there was like something, like programming was a thing, but I had to figure it out the hard way. And I sort of accidentally started with machine language because I had a sector editor. And I was trying to figure out how these programs work because I didn't have the code for them. I just had the binaries. Anyway, it was masochistic, but I learned a lot about computers in those days. And so then I sort of developed reverse engineering as a learning style. And then by the early 80s, I got on mainframes and I was a kid, but the other people on mainframes were all like computer science professors or something. And so
the gray boats.
Pick their brains. Yeah. So I learned a lot that way. Hacking was the way that you interacted with a computer, at least for me. And so I wasn't ever formally trained in anything. And then, of course, by the 90s, we were building the internet after being on BBSs and all those things through the 80s and 90s. When we started just loading people online in mass, it just seemed almost reckless because we knew how insecure everything was. And I got more and more obsessed with this idea that we could design these things to be more secure. I wanted to make more secure protocols using encryption. And so I ended up hanging out with cypherpunks in the 90s, and we were trying to figure out how to create these protocols using encryption that would enforce a level playing field and enforce a sort of freedom online that to keep people from suppressing other folks from doing whatever they wanted on the network, but also to keep things secure. And at the time, it was probably one of the more fringe neighborhoods of the internet. Anyway, all my friends ended up being hackers after that. And so we ended up doing a lot of early activism around cryptography, the Clipper chip stuff, when they were trying to put it first in passports, which we won for a while and then lost. The fight around PGP, the things around trying to regulate the length of keys in symmetric crypto, stuff like that. Not necessarily worth recounting the whole history, but I was living in the Bay Area during a lot of that. A lot of the characters who made the things that were successful are friends of mine. That's the early remailers that were a way of trying to decentralize communication, BitTorrent, of course, Tor browser, the Onion router, those technologies, and Bitcoin. And so those are things that all came out of that community. And I think of them as, in some sense, major successes, like proof that this notion using cryptography, the crypto toolkit, I should say, as a way of making the internet more open and free and reliable, which is sort of counter to people's impression, I think, of what cryptography is about. And
I think what we achieved there is essentially mostly delaying action. There were always two parts to the fight. The CCC has been always on both the technical side and the legal/political side. On the legal and political side, what we achieved in Europe is a lot of delay on. We won battles like we killed voting computers in Germany. We won the crypto wars in Europe that were kind of separate but connected. But the other side is not giving up.
They were battles, not wars.
Yeah, exactly. The thing that we're now seeing is that while big tech companies have been our allies for digital freedoms for a while, because they shared the same interest. They wanted a free and open internet. They wanted to use encryption. So they didn't want to regulate it to death by the governments. The whole thing has changed now. So now we are in the position where the ex-boss of NSA goes directly to OpenAI. So in the teams of Google and Microsoft, you have a lot of people who are from the national security complex, basically NSA people. And so and Microsoft sitting on exploits for half a year unexplained before fixing them. This is the change of the world has been happening very quietly, which is basically, okay, the intelligence agencies recognize crypto is here to stay, and we can maybe break it here and there sometime if somebody does a bad implementation or fucks up its random generation or stuff like that. But strategically, they're working on this. We always want to have the exploits to get into the systems if we want to, and do it on an industrial scale. And now with the AI craze, they see for the first time the option to actually get all the information they want from the people who type it in willingly. And because nobody really knows what does data security and self-learning LLM even mean. So, and this is, I think, the current change of this whole security theater, where even companies like Apple or Microsoft, or they don't even have a definition. What does AI security even mean? So does it mean make sure that your LLM doesn't say bad things? Or does it mean it should never reveal information that somebody else typed into it? So it's totally unclear. And what happens if the first weighted models get extracted, which probably has happened already? How do you extract information from that?
There's no undo for that.
I've been basically coming the same route. So I grew up in East Germany, and my first computer was an Zilog Z80 clone that was built in Eastern Germany.
Wow.
That run at a glorious 1.75 megahertz and 16 kilobytes of RAM. And so I programmed that thing also first in BASIC and then in machine language and assembler. And kept at it essentially, and then went on to found a company that does, after sold things at other companies. Among them, one of those was Art & Com, that you may know from this Netflix series $1 Billion Code.
Okay.
So that was one of the companies I was back then when I was an intern, so that I was young. And after that, I found a company that made maps and basically what is today as something like Waze or so, but it was in the 90s already. And then I founded a company co-founded a company that does secure communications. So basically encryption is basically my daily business. And then the political side is this whole privacy, right to encrypt, right to hack, right to repair is basically what we do in the CCC. And so we're kind of an unusual organization because we're not just in political NGO like EFF is or something.
Okay.
But we also are a very local hacker organization.
Yeah.
So we have groups in basically all relevant German cities.
Which are the irrelevant German cities? I'm kidding.
It's basically all university cities plus quite a number of others. So
I get it.
It's a fairly distributed movement, and people do a lot of technical hacking in the sense of using other people's technology in ways that they didn't intend to, but also a lot of outreach, education programs for school children. So it's basically we're doing everything that's in the US kind of separated into these political people, and then we have these hacker people at 2600, and then there's this maker universe thing.
Yeah.
That's all in CCC in one organization,
okay.
so which is kind of cool because we basically all talk to each other, share the same ideals and ideas.
When did you get involved?
In 1990, basically, right after the war came down, the CCC people came to East Berlin when the war came down and made a conference there. I'm with them.
And one of the things I see a lot in Germany is this. I mean, we have it in the U.S. too. It's not but there's a kind of cultural norm around, kind of following the directions. Like, I think the schools here are very oriented around a methodical sort of education, and it doesn't seem to me, in my experience, that a lot of divergence or creativity or is encouraged or celebrated or developed.
So our local groups, we are so many because the kids that don't like to follow the rules,
they show up at the CCC.
Yeah.
I mean, because my impression, it's interesting because I partly have that impression from talking to parents and also knowing a lot of Germans. But when I go to CCC, my mind is blown, and I've been everywhere, and that's coming from DEF CON, which probably German hackers think would be amazing to go to, and it is. But when you go to CCC, I remember going there the first time is in Berlin, and it's like in the bottom of that building with Das Blinken lights on the front, and it's in the basement, and it's just a swarm of like hundreds of hackers with all kinds of computers and equipment and everything, just a pile. And I haven't really, it hasn't been like that at DEF CON for a long time, but I don't know. I see that is very creative. It's very open-ended. The hackers were doing amazing stuff I couldn't believe was possible, which I think is also saying something because I see a lot. And it's very encouraging. It's exciting. And to me, it's like, I don't know if it's like a high contrast thing because of this sort of repressive, cultural vibe that's the mainstream thing. And so there has to be a, equally significant backlash movement, and that's what ended up happening.
Yeah, it is two things. One is that high contrast to the conventional education system, but on the other hand, the CCC has become a sort of accepted part of society.
Yeah.
Because we are the organization where politics, also the courts, like our Supreme, basically our Constitutional Court, come to when they really need to understand technology questions.
Amazing.
And because we are always friendly.
Yeah. Okay.
And funny.
Okay.
So that's all
right.
So we explain things but we also make fun of people. So like when we had this fight about their fingerprints in our passports, ID documents. So and we didn't want to have that because the reasons are obvious. Because you have only a tenant changing name of heart, which is a bad thing for a password. And so what we did is we borrowed a glass of water from our back then Minister of Interior from a podium at a talk and extracted his fingerprint and published it.
Yeah.
So published it in our magazine,
great.
And we also published it to the news organizations and so on. And we really hoped he would sue us, but fortunately he was smart enough not to do that. But this is the way we work, basically. So we try to make it memorable, funny, but to the point. So basically trying to make the point in a way that people understand it intuitively, even
Yeah.
if they're not technical.
Yeah.
And that also is something that politicians like, so that
Great.
they can come to us. Which in turn also means that a lot of parents are not afraid of sending their kids to us.
Right.
Because we are in the news, so we are these friendly hackers, they're kind of good and they're kind of destructive if need to, but they're kind of
Wow.
an element of society that has established its place there.
Wow.
And this is kind of unique worldwide.
It is
I think,
unique
yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
amazing and
Mhm.
inspiring. Like we don't have that at
Mhm.
all. As you know, we have like the EFF, which is kind of the lobby group that
Privacy. Yeah.
yeah, and privacy and computer stuff in general. I don't know how much policymakers really look to them for advice or try to flee
Yeah.
from them or avoid them. I don't know that humor ever really entered into the equation. We haven't been good about that. The friendly hacker thing is not really a meme yet in the U.S.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what happened.
I think a lot of what happened in the US had also to do with the way that the whole cybersecurity field got
Yeah.
commercialized,
Right.
which was happening in Germany as well, but not as aggressively.
Okay.
And what happened here also is that a lot of hackers that are in CCC are working professionally in the field as consultants or running
Sure.
companies, stuff like that. But they keep it separate.
Mhm.
So it's like the CCC is set up in a way that conferences, but also the organization, that it's not commercial at all. So we have memberships and membership dues, but we're not sponsored and we don't take money from anybody.
Yeah.
So we give money because we give money to good causes that we think are worthwhile. But we never accepted like major cybersecurity firm doing a career fair at our events or something like that.
Yeah.
So this never happened, and this kind of kept the field separate. So a lot of people are either members of CCC or
Yeah.
working with us, even they are professionally CIO at the major German corporation.
Right.
So this is the
Super
Kind
cool.
of
Has there
meant-
been anything like it since Europe also? Have you seen that expand to other parts of Europe even? Or
No.
is there nothing analogous even in Europe?
No, not really. Unfortunately, not. The culture is very different. It has also a lot to do with people
Yeah.
and how the cultural DNA is basically transported to the next generation. And so we are working well with other European organizations, but that everything is under one roof, basically, in this field is unfortunately kind of unique. Yeah.
And do you have to deliberately sort of manage that culture? And what's the governance like? Like, how do you decide as a group what to do and not to do? Is there any of that? It's structured or is it chaos?
It's so formally we are in registered association, but that mostly concerns money.
Yeah.
So basically, what local group get what subsidy for their rent, that
Okay.
kind of stuff.
So they have physical spaces. in
Yeah,
these
we
cities.
have a lot of physical space,
Okay.
but these are the local groups, and they do their own thing.
Yeah.
So they do their own initiatives, their kids stuff, their whatever. And the CCC as an organization is mostly caring for like central politics lobbying, press.
Mhm.
So we do most of the press work centrally. And the way that works is that's actually in meritocracy. People who are respected in an organization and do work for a long time gain the trust of the organization to do that. And this is there's a democracy process to actually confirm these people, but it's not like a formal thing. There's a lot of talking, a lot of cultural transfer, a lot of things that are very informal. So if we would love to get rid of this formal association thing, but we can't because it's Germany.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, this meritocracy thing would be interesting to try in like a company or something.
Yeah.
I remember when I went to Berlin for Congress in like, I want to say 2001 or 2 or something. I went to Seabase.
Mhm.
So is that one of those physical spaces that,
Seabase is different from CCC,
Okay.
but a lot of there's a
Overlap,
lot of
okay.
personal overlap. They're in Berlin forever. I have been member of, and we go partying there. It's one of these spaces that are not formally
I get it.
CCC, but they get their own whenever we do Congress or camp. They have their own village there
Yeah.
because we are very good friends
Yeah, I get it.
organizationally. So
okay.
that happens with a lot of local groups that they are not formal part of CCC,
Yeah.
but what we call the chaos family.
Mm-hmm.
So basically people who share the same mindset, the same outlook on the world, but have maybe a different focus, like Seabase saying, okay, we have this whole spaceship cosplay thing,
Yeah.
which is their cultural center thing, and they're more in a making thing than in a hacking thing.
Yeah.
But it's totally good. It's fine.
Yeah.
They all belong to our
When I went to
Yeah.
Seabase, my mind was blown. These
Mm.
people, they didn't talk about it like it was a
Yeah.
art project or something. They talk about it like it's an actual space station.
Yes. So
There's never any breaking character. They're just like, no, this is our space station. This
Mhm.
here is mission control.
this is main hole. Yeah.
This
yeah.
is the like
Yeah.
they literally just act as if it's all totally normal,
Yeah.
and that was amazing to me.
Yeah, but it's a good example.
Yeah.
So there's basically zero competition among the groups.
Okay.
So there are even multiple groups in one city, like in Berlin. We have like 4 or 5 hack spaces that are
Yeah.
loosely associated with CCC. And there's the CCC Berlin, and that's all fine. And people go to all the spaces
Yeah.
because they have different focus, different culture.
Yeah.
But they kind of belong to the same family. So this is the way how we do this. All very cooperative, not competitive. Yeah.
I can't imagine, like, if I started something like that in the US, I think it would just devolve into an argument about some political discussion that was completely irrelevant to the mission.
It's not like we are political. I mean, we
Yeah.
have very firm political beliefs, so we
Yeah.
are very anti-authoritarian. So we
Anti-authoritarian.
Yeah, that is very, very strong,
Okay.
and which also means that we speak out against Nazis in Germany, and
Yeah.
which also means that we are very strong in our beliefs what we do in political lobbying when it comes to privacy and right to encrypt and
Yeah.
data protection, this kind of stuff. But we are not going into party politics in
I
that
see.
sense. So
I see.
it's basically we have this strong set of beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
but they're non-partisan.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And those things are stated well enough or clear enough that if people come hang out with the CCC, they know what they're getting into.
Yep.
So do you think that over the time, so we're talking, 35 years of history with the CCC,
Mhm.
obviously it's gotten bigger in some sense, gone to more cities. Probably the nature of the people who are attracted to it hasn't changed that much. New generations of the same kinds of
Yeah.
fringe wackos who love to be a little counterculture and figure things out for themselves. Is there any major shifts over time that you've observed or things that have changed a lot? Or
So there are things that you can observe over such a long time frame, which is people in the last years tend to be more fond of rules,
yeah,
in the sense that they want to have more rules to govern their social sphere, and which I don't like, and which many of the others don't like.
yeah,
But it's a tendency that in a world that's getting more insecure, people tend to want more rules
yeah,
and regulations, and are uncomfortable with saying, okay, but we can solve this by just talking about it. This is something that has changed, and this is something also that bothers me, because CCC as an organization has a very strong tradition of as little rules as possible,
yeah,
only as many rules as necessary, and but rather have strong institutions that solve issues. So either trusted people or processes that make sure that issues can be resolved peacefully and well. That's something that has changed. Another thing that's changed, our relations with large political organizations and government organizations have become more normal.
Huh.
So that is something they know that we will openly criticize them if needed,
Yeah.
but we will be fair about it.
yeah,
So that means that even if they fuck up badly, we'll give them a fair warning and tell them, okay, please fix that stuff. We will go to press in 2 days, and
Right.
but you have the time to fix it. You better use it. And since we have been doing it for a long time, they know that we will keep our word,
Yeah.
and that in both directions. So that also means that if they want to see a researcher about a security-related publication, and we support that researcher, like if he has spoken at CCC conference, they know it doesn't make sense to sue us, so because we will win anyway. So that has changed in a way. Yeah.
wow. I sort of imagine, like, when the U.S. Congress has a hearing and hauls somebody from Silicon Valley up
Yeah.
for interrogation, you guys are just out here with beer, watching and laughing the whole time. Like,
In a way, Yeah, the U.S. political system is vastly different in the sense that it's all much bigger, but you then also have very substantial stuff like when much went to testify about Twitter, for instance. That stuff has, of course, also major impact, and stuff this big doesn't happen here. So because we don't don't have the big
The
tech companies.
entertainment value of government is much lower.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Yeah, we're pegging the charts on that.
yeah.
One thing I noticed early on was that my favorite people to hang out with were hackers because they were so irreverent and really, I don't know if it's the same for you, but for us, the discourse was always beholden to what was technically true. It's like everything you're talking about, you could be as antagonistic as you wanted. You could be loud and insult people and tear the shit out of whatever they were talking about, but you had to be technically right or you would lose.
Yep.
I find that that's quite rare for me to experience these days, and I miss it a lot. I think those were the best times of my life, was being in a room full of poorly behaved computer nerds who were arguing. Maybe you could observe that changing over time too. I mean, do you feel
that is certainly true. That's for good and for worse. The good thing is certainly that more civilized communication means that more people can participate.
Yeah.
The bad thing about it is that quite often truth doesn't get told when it should be told, because some people don't say, okay, I don't want to be ridiculed because I'm loud and not well spoken.
Yeah.
So I keep my mouth shut, even if I know what's actually going on. Inside CCC, there has been a mix of that. So we certainly have become more civilized in our internal discourse.
Here.
On the other hand, this meritocratic principle means also that people have learned to tell truth in more civilized terms.
Okay.
In a way. So that means that you don't need to be loud and obnoxious to actually tell the truth. You can do it also soft-spoken, and people will actually listen. That is something they're saying that it's better and it's worse in a way. But in general, I think the big problem in the US that I'm seeing is that this whole cybersecurity rockstar bullshit thing meant that a lot of bad behavior was not correlated with actual high knowledge.
Yeah.
So I'm very well tolerating big egos if there's actually something behind it. So I'm very fine with that.
Yeah.
I'm not very fine with big egos and nothing behind it. And that people emulating this bad behavior because it was associated with people who had actual good knowledge and good capabilities in the hope that it would disguise that they are basically not capable. That kind of was one of the things that unnerved me about the US scene for a while.
Fair enough. Well, I'd like to formally apologize for my part in whatever I had to do with creating that culture. Yeah, I get it. I feel like that was the thing that the culture solved for, because you could, if you were full of shit, even if you weren't, you'd get shouted down. I remember speaking at DEF CON, the only reason anybody was in the audience was to tell me why I was full of shit. And so I think, maybe you're right. I don't know, maybe you're right. Maybe there was another wave where it was like people started to think that the important part of, I don't know, being a hacker was to act as if you were a know-it-all or something. I don't know, even if you didn't. Yeah.
There's certainly cultural difference in the sense that also a lot of American hackers who were more on the quiet side were drawn to Europe for that reason. So we had a lot of very good talks and workshops at Congress.
Sure.
From people who would never bother to go to DEF CON.
Yeah.
Because they feel it's too rowdy, to not nice. And so at Congress, basically everybody who goes, they probably can attest to that. They say, okay, it's nice here.
Yeah.
So it's finally nice people, and it's nice here. Yeah? That's this is the culture that we like to keep up in a way. So without going too far in their nobody should shout ever direction. So if they have a reason, they should shout. I mean, but
at ShmooCon, we made this tradition where when you check in, you get a swag bag of useless crap. But one of the useless things you get is a shmoo ball, which is like a foam ball. Everybody gets one, and you can throw it at the speaker.
Okay.
So if you're speaking at ShmooCon, and you say anything that people don't like or disagree with, you'll get a barrage of these rubber balls thrown at you. And it's just, they don't hurt anybody. It's kind of a fun tradition and a way of normalizing the response from the audience, because they really are there to make sure that you're staying on top of things. I don't know. It's a fun accountability mechanism.
I like that.
ShmooCon is also much friendlier. It's not nearly as
unfortunately, I never have been. That would be one of the conferences I would like to go.
We're doing the last one.
Oh.
After we said we were going to do it for 20 years, I think it's January is the last one.
Oh, so I should hurry up.
If you can go in January, that'd be great, but that'll be it. Got other things to do. But ShmooCon also became sort of the, I'd say, interface between the hacker community and the Beltway and all the Washington, D.C., national, federal agencies trying to help with security on a nation state level at the U.S. And so it actually ended up being a valuable and important thing. But I think it just sort of started much later, of course, than DEF CON, and was able to kind of learn from some of the other things.
So different culture.
TourCon and some of the other events that came before that. We were able to learn from that and just say, okay, how do we make this kind of manageable and cool and not insane? But DEF CON will always have a place in my heart from those early years.
Sure. I mean, sure.
Yeah.
That's clearly the case. I mean, they had this a conference on its own right and legacy.
Yeah. My impression about European societies, Western European societies, is that it's at least safe to say they've been uncompetitive at innovation in technology.
So we have been uncompetitive in productizing innovation.
Okay.
So innovation itself, when you look at machine learning researchers who started all the big companies, 1/3 of them educated European universities.
Okay.
If you look at a lot of the people who made big stuff in the Silicon Valley, all from Europe. ASML, the company that makes the machines that build all our chips, Dutch. Built on optics from Zeiss in Germany and lasers from Trump also in Germany. So it's not like we lack innovation capability, but we lack the capability to make large consumer-facing innovation companies. So that has a couple of reasons. One of them is that our tax laws are, quite frankly, not very innovation-friendly. For instance, if we want to set up an employee stock option pool, which is basically the breathing in the Silicon Valley, doesn't work in Germany.
Wow.
So we need to make very extreme legal constructions to make something like this.
Wow.
So a lot of the tax rules around how venture capital works in Europe are not very friendly both to investors and to founders.
Right.
So you could, in Germany as a founder, if you're unlucky, you may need to pay taxes on unrealized gains in stock. So this kind of stuff makes it when you grow above a certain size as a startup in Germany and also other parts of Europe, it becomes outright dangerous. So financially and competitively. And that means that at some point in time, a lot of companies then decide, okay, let's move somewhere else. So this is the core problem. So we have great universities. Our education system is, while not great, still good.
For engineering and
everything. We also have a lot of creativity here.
Okay.
But the problem is essentially that this whole venture capital ecosystem, this whole way of, you found a company, even if you're not successful, that's not really a problem because you can just found the next company. This has not really taken root. So I've been running I founded my first startup in, when was it, 1999? So, and we were one of the first big startups in Berlin. And it was an absolute pain. So it was like, nobody knew that. So the banks could not handle the concept of a startup. The office rental companies were like, okay, you want to rent this much space, but you're only existing for 3 months. How does that work? So this kind of stuff. And this has changed a bit, but it takes a long time. And this is one of so these, I think, are the main reasons. That it's not like there is no entrepreneurial spirit that's there. It's just that it's damn hard. So it's really damn hard to actually found and run and finance a company, especially in Germany, but other countries in Europe too.
Yeah. So they're getting chased out to the US or
Yes.
wherever.
But that's what happens.
We'll take it.
Yeah, I know. It's basically self-inflicted brain drain.
Well, the good thing for you is that we have such fucked up immigration policy that we're not taking nearly as many as we should. So we're just taking the refugees and the people who are criminals instead. Yeah, I know it's tough. My impression, and this could just be a cartoon impression of Europe, but one of the big factors that I see as being high contrast is I've literally had the experience of having a startup that failed.
Mhm.
And the next day, my investors are calling me not to find out what went wrong or where their money is, find out what I'm doing next. Like,
Mhm.
that's real. That's not abnormal. That happens all the time in Silicon Valley. We just understand that this is an ecosystem. We've got to get a lot of shots on goal. A lot of things aren't going to work out. Go forward. And it seems like that's the thing to me that is the most high contrast piece of the success of Silicon Valley that's missing everywhere else I go.
That's true.
Everywhere in the world except for Tel Aviv, I see a fake Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And because of that. And I'm curious what you think about that. Is there exceptions to that, or is there any signs of hope, or is it trending in some way? Or?
So there's a bit of movement in the sense that in government there's now a newer generation coming to the reins that understands that experiments involve failures, and that failures are not really a problem, but learning opportunities, and that you need to build the structures for that. But essentially the mindset in the Silicon Valley follows the tax law. Yeah. I mean, it's basically as long as you're an investor can fully deduct the losses from one company from the profits from the next company, for him everything is fine. So he just needs a 1 in 10 success rate. That's all just numbers moved from left to right, which also means that if he identifies people who are good entrepreneurs and who have good ideas, of course he will call you. And here it's when you're running company into the ground, then you kind of this guy ran a company into the ground.
They hold it against you for the next 3 lifetimes.
It's getting better, but it's not yet good.
Getting better slowly. There's some things that, for whatever complaints anyone might have about Silicon Valley, and there's a multitude of them, we're doing something that works. I want to see this diffuse around the world. I think to scale this up, it can't just be Silicon Valley. We need the whole world to help advance new technologies. And to make that happen, what I'm hoping is that some of these other places will recognize what worked in Silicon Valley and copy that. Steal the things that work, show us how to do it better, improve on the things that suck or didn't work. And so if you flip that around, do you think there are things that, when you look at the US or the tech industry in Silicon Valley, are there things that you see that we should be copying from here, or that we're missing or doing wrong?
So what I think one of the few things why Germany is still an economic powerhouse is because we never deindustrialized. Which means that whenever I do something here, I can do at least high-end prototyping and also high manufacturing can basically within a train's drive. For basically everything, optics, electronics, mechanics, everything, new materials. And which is partly also because you have the strong automotive industry that basically keeps all these companies alive. And the other thing that begins to work is this universities as breeding grounds for startups that is no longer frowned upon, which is in the US, it's totally normal that the universities breed startups. Here it is becoming more normal, but I think the way that we handle education for skilled workers. So there's basically not, so when you become a mechanic or an electromechanic or whatever, there's an education system that basically focuses on both theory and practice, and that's relatively formalized. And somebody who comes out of that education system, you can be pretty sure that the person really knows how to do that. So
Great.
that an electrician that comes out of that program knows how to wire an electric system up to standard with a high reliability. And this is something that we still profit from, and that I think the US would also profit from if we are exporting that system to many countries, interestingly. Yeah, that this so-called dual education system, where people are half the time in school and half the time at a company, doing practical stuff and getting teach stuff and how it works in practice. This is one of the few really strong points of the German education system that works pretty well.
It seems to me like with all the deglobalization stuff, we're trying to figure out how do we make stuff in the US again. We're sort of in the very early stages of that because we gave up almost exactly the wrong time ago. We almost just finished forgetting everything. When we had to start over. For instance, when I moved to Seattle in 2001 from the Bay Area, when San Francisco started to suck. And we have this part of town called Soto, which is called south of the Dome. And that's just, there used to be a dome, but it's gone. But we still call it Soto. And that's the industrial part of town. And it was basically the support industry for Boeing. Thousands of little machine shops and companies making everything that Boeing needed. And by 2001, a lot of that stuff was still there, but Boeing wasn't using it anymore. And Boeing had sent everything to Asia. And these crusty old machinists were still hanging out. Like I could go into a machine shop and they'd just be there smoking a cigarette with nothing to do, spending the day at work because,
that's what they have done all the years.
That's what they've done their whole life. They're just there. And it was great for me because I could just walk in and get them to help me build stuff because they didn't have anything better to do. But that's all gone now. That over between 2001, over the next decade, all those shops just closed and closed and closed until there was like one or two left, and now even those are gone. So it's kind of the opposite of what you describe here. You still have that, and it could disappear, but right now it hasn't, which is amazing because it seems to me like Germany could be the manufacturing arm of the U.S. Like Germany could make all this stuff that we can't get done in China anymore. That seems like if Germany did nothing else but do that, it could be an amazing boon for this economy.
We do that in like in factory automation. So factory automation, Germany is the undisputed king. So like companies like Festro. So we did some mistakes. So we had this great robotics company called KUKA.
KUKA.
And we sold it to the Chinese, which was a stupid mistake. But hopefully that will not be repeated. But
China bought every single sewing machine company from Germany. All these incredible articulate mastery of machine work, sewing machines, and now China owns them all.
So industrial policy in Germany has been totally short-sighted and stupid for a long time. I mean, we have been pumping billions into keeping up department stores, industrial policy, but we let China buy the world's premier robotics manufacturer. It doesn't make sense. I don't know where Germany will be going, actually. We need to get rid of a ton of bureaucracy. We need to get rid of really arcane tax laws, and we need to get rid of a lot of very slow government processes. So there's hope that it can succeed. It's unclear if that will succeed.
You and I aren't going to live that long.
Maybe we will. Maybe. So what do you think in the US what will happen? In Europe, discussing a lot about the US elections because you think it will be geopolitically important, but will it affect the valley in one way or another? Or is election something the valley says we don't care?
I shouldn't venture into this.
I'm more interested on a meta level.
But what I think on a meta level, what I think is in the long history of Silicon Valley, we were exactly the right distance from Washington, D.C. to ignore it. And
but
we got away with that for a long time, but we can't anymore.
It's with Google and Microsoft and Amazon, you can't anymore.
Microsoft was the first to wake up because of antitrust. And whenever that was, centuries ago, they sort of got the memo and are like, oh shit, we need to go spend some time in DC. So they got a head start, and they're actually quite sophisticated, I'd say, about their relationship with Washington, DC. And interestingly, don't really see Microsoft in the headlines for all the things that people are pissed off about from the tech industry.
Except of the Deezer
Except for which?
Your information security agency
Oh, yeah.
kind of tells them that they should get their act together, rightfully so.
Yeah. But compared to the other companies that have these consumer-facing products and all the bad behavior with that, Microsoft is handling it all quite well, I'd say. Google was probably the next one to wake up. They started lobbying, I guess, maybe 15 years ago or something, just lightly. I don't totally understand why. But the tech industry overall has started to figure out that there's something there. I think a lot of it's motivated by trying to keep them off their back initially. Now there's a lot of movement around regulatory capture.
They learned from the tobacco industry.
They learned from the tobacco industry. They learned from oil, and it is very sickening in some ways to see that happening. I think you can see people in the AI game are doing a juvenile version of that, and it's embarrassing and sickening to see them attempt to go and try and effect some regulatory capture for themselves. But on the plus side, I think there are some interesting things happening. One of them is that the tech industry recently woke up to the fact that they need a lot of energy, and they need it to be clean, and they need it to be cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that that's going to be possible is to build nuclear reactors.
At
And
least in the
nuclear
short run,
reactors are, they're kind of painted into a corner with regulatory bullshit left over from 60 years ago, largely affected by the oil industry that was trying to get regulatory capture. Not entirely, but partially. And they had the biggest lobby for my entire lifetime. But the tech industry is getting a bigger and bigger lobby, and they have the most money and the most at stake. And so I think the tech industry will start to have a lot of influence in Congress. And I think that they will free up nuclear reactors. And I'm very excited about that because I think it's the most fundamental thing that can improve the world as a whole.
I mean, in Europe, we are kind of, after Chernobyl, not so fond of nuclear.
Yeah.
So Germany is betting interestingly big on fusion.
Yeah.
Which is good. I have been at one of the research facilities in Greifswald, the Stellarator system, where they have hundreds of seconds of stable plasma already.
Yeah.
And just need to figure out a way how to get the energy out. So they're making massive progress. It's just, they basically say they are 20 billion away from a working fusion reactor, which is minuscule amount of money comparatively. And the other thing that is happening here big time is, that's what I ask you, is energy storage on a distributed level. So that's going to be very interesting.
I think both of those are things that, so look, I take all these technologies and I put them in two piles.
Mm-hmm.
Requires a miracle, does not require a miracle.
Mm-hmm.
And the first pile, I don't work on. If it requires a miracle, that doesn't happen on a schedule. You can't put a calendar date on it. You can't put a budget on it. We don't know when you're going to get the breakthroughs. So to me, I think it's a little disingenuous. I think grid scale energy storage is basically in that pile. And I also think that fusion is basically in that pile. Now, it's not as bad as it was a couple years ago, largely because I think at least Commonwealth Fusion Systems has a practical roadmap that gets it out of the realm of science and into the realm of engineering.
Yeah.
So that is new. We weren't there 2 years ago or so, but Commonwealth is clearly in the realm of engineering. A lot of these other fusion projects, some of them I don't know that well. I think they range from extreme engineering to fraudulent. That's really where it's at. And in the best case scenario, I think they're going to be very long, hard engineering hauls. I think people are being very disingenuous about the scale of the problems they have. Where are you going to get all that tritium? We don't have enough tritium in the world to power more than a couple of these things. They have to breed their own tritium at like 99% efficiency. That's never been done before. Maybe that's going to work. We don't know. They have to deal with free-flying neutrons that are destroying the reactor, which you spent billions building. I mean, to me, there's just a lot of really hard problems there. So I think people are overstating what they can do and certainly how quickly they can do it. And so I think, to me, pinning the energy future of any country on fusion is irresponsible at this point. Yeah.
I mean, Germany's strategy is basically saying we build enough renewables that we can do power to gas on scale,
Yeah.
which probably will succeed because you have so much wind in the North Sea. And fusion is just the horse to bet on, because the problem, so the meter problem is essentially
Chips and float them around the world and sell energy. That would be the biggest boon to the economy. It would be the biggest boon to the environment. It would be the biggest boon to human health and safety. Everything. Clean water, sanitation, recycling, everything you would solve if Germany did that, because they build reactors. They have, and they know how. They know how to build stuff, and they know how to build ships.
The problem essentially is nuclear waste is completely unsolved here. So we are still having it sitting at above ground somewhere and don't know what to do with it.
Well, that's one where, again, like modern reactors wouldn't have that problem. They can use the waste as fuel.
So you keep saying, but I haven't really seen the data on that.
Oh, I can show you.
Yeah.
I'll send you some stuff.
That would be interesting, yeah.
Yeah. We have not been allowed to build these breeder reactors yet, but we totally can. It's not as hard as fusion. I'll tell you that much.
That could be.
Not even close.
I mean, France is running a breeder for us. So we have been previously using Russian breeder reactors.
Yeah.
The Russian ones have been incredibly unsafe, and the French...
Not incredibly unsafe. They're scary, but they have not been unsafe. More people die falling off the roof installing solar panels than have ever died from any nuclear reactors. I'm not kidding. Like, this is a misnomer that I can't let it slide.
Okay, so it might be. So I don't think in Germany too many people have died installing solar panels on the roof.
They don't put it in the press here, I noticed.
Yeah, no, we have very strict workplace rules. Like very, very strict workplace rules.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, so anyways, I think the key thing is that the German public is kind of not trusting in centralized solutions anymore, because typically they have been associated with a lot of corruption, a lot of, oops, it didn't work out, we need subsidies. So that's the history of it. So it's basically, it started with nuclear here, started with energy too cheap to meter, and ended with, we need like 30 billion subsidies to even run the stuff.
Yeah.
So we're installing tons of solar and local storage. We're installing tons of wind, lots of bioenergy stuff, mostly to use what's ever left in agriculture. But we haven't really a good idea, essentially. It's not like we have the master plan to solve the problem. Germany will have an energy problem in the foreseeable future if we don't get anything up. No.
Going back to your question, I guess I kind of dodged it. I think that the democracy thing that we've been experimenting with for a couple hundred years now needs some real maintenance work. A lot of people want to blame whoever's president for whatever's happening, but one thing I believe is that the representative part of representative democracy is quite visible in the president. Like who we elect as president really is unfortunately a reflection of where society is at. And I don't think we're going to fix anything by who we elect. We need to fix it by becoming the people who would never elect those folks in the first place and who would demand an administration with more integrity and with more of a meaningful plan for how to make things better. I don't see that on either side. I'm not taking sides on this. I think they all suck. That's just my view. But I think it's a sign of the lack of maintenance work we've done in our society. There are a lot of problems in the U.S. that are self-inflicted. Any one policy isn't going to fix it. We have been trying to do something that is not working with the extreme levels of urbanization and affluence. People like to call it inequality, and there's always some version of that, but we all got a pretty good ride as far as the affluence goes. Americans get more money, more education, more economic opportunity on the whole. I'm not saying not to belittle anyone who's been marginalized in some way, but we're all doing better than our parents did, and are certainly better than our grandparents did. And we just got that kind of for free by being American. And I think that rather than taking that and saying, okay, how do we level up? How do we build a better world? people have just become very entitled and they're not, I don't think they're working very hard on making things better. And so to me, that's the disappointing thing. So I'm more disappointed in the people around me than I am in the government even. I'm sickened by the government, especially I've been living in Seattle. The local government there is abominable. Like they're really fucking that town up. I have such a bad attitude there. I lived there for 25 years almost. That's not okay. I feel powerless to solve it. It's really sickening that could even happen. And the problem is like these are people who are like well-meaning in some sense, but they have no strategic thinking ability. And so they're running the city into the ground. You see that, of course, in San Francisco and other places on the West Coast are kind of the worst of it. But I can't even blame them. I blame the people around me who voted for them. And I see them everywhere. And to me, that feels wrong. So I think that societies need to recognize that they need to evolve. They need to cherry pick the things that worked well in the past. You can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. There were things our parents did well that they have that we don't. And those are not material things at all. Those are societal things. They went to church. I'm not saying like we don't go to church. Church is a obsolete concept to me, and my kids only been to church with their grandmother and can't imagine why anybody would do that. But that was a community structure that was very important. And we haven't replaced it with something better. I'm saying if you throw out church, fine, but you got to replace it with something better. And that's what we're not doing. We're throwing out the stuff that we object to, that we don't like, that we think was unfair, that we think was paternalistic, or whatever complaint you've got, but we aren't replacing it with something better. And to me, that is what is unforgivable. And it takes everyone, like no one person can do that. So we have to try these things and we have to evolve our societies.
What I see is essentially that the trap of postmodernism, so that we basically question everything into shards.
Yeah.
And the hope was that something new comes from it in the end.
Yeah.
But it has not happened. So basically
right.
This whole question everything was good because there was a lot very questionable about all systems.
Sure.
And a lot of it was extremely oppressive and unfair to people.
Right.
And so it is good that they broke down. But what we didn't manage is create from the shards of that something new.
Yeah.
At least not on large scale, only in isolated pockets. And what I think is that what we need is a new enlightened modernism. So something where we say, okay, we have common goals, like saving the planet, making sure everybody gets good healthcare and the right to survive and so on, and make that something like a common goal. And so in Europe has some idea of that. So we have this European value thing.
Yeah.
But we are very bad in actually making it operational. So we're kind of very bad, and so there's this huge gap between the values that are postulated by politics and their actually actions. And so and getting this to an empirical level and saying, okay, does this policy objectively improve this metric? So what are actually our optimization criteria? This is, I think, the key question to ask. So whether for AI systems or for politics or for social systems is first get an understanding about what is our common optimization criteria set. So what do we optimize for?
Yeah.
And once we declare that openly, I mean, even if the goal is sounding stupid or unfair, whatever, at least it's an open goal.
Yeah.
And after that, we can measure, does our policy actually help us reach this goal? Do we get closer to the local optimum of that?
Yeah.
And that is something what I'm trying to propose also in this whole discussion about AI and privacy and so on is what I'm interested in is mostly what do the people training the machines are optimizing for?
Yeah.
Because software is always a reflection of human intent.
Yes.
And what I want to know is the human intent behind it.
Yeah.
And this is also the same thing for corporations and for political systems. Is what is the actual intent behind, not the postulated intent, but the actual intent. And I think that this is discussions that we need to have more as societies, is basically getting down to the question, what do we optimize for? What do we find more important than other things?
We need to stack rank our values.
Yeah.
And that is the thing people are unwilling to do.
Yeah.
It's actually sickening to see, to me, like the SDGs, the UN SDGs, in the first iteration, there were the Millennium Goals, and I think there were 11 of them.
Yeah.
And they were very discrete targets, and we made pretty good progress on them. And the SDGs ended up becoming this like dump truck full of everything everybody wanted that would be awesome in the world. And none of them are achievable. I don't know about none, but most of them are unachievable.
Yeah.
And there's no effort to stack rank them, no effort to set like what matters more, which ones are achievable, what could we do first, what's a logical order to solve these, and none of that. So we're kind of failing at all of them, and we're just wasting a lot of attention and resources.
Stumbling along.
Yeah, stumbling along.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one thing I think you should be proud of is the CCC is an example of an evolved social experiment, you could say.
In a way, yeah.
In a way. I mean, it's not a panacea, but it is one attempt. I mean, it's not church, but it does some of what church did. It's not a school. It does some of what a school did.
What we call it is basically it's in cultural space.
Yeah.
So we have developed a culture that has become sort of self-sustained.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought computer nerds could do that?
Yeah. Right.
Well, I appreciate that. In my mind, these are things that are harder to do now, in part because for like the whole history of humans, when you got pissed off at your neighbors or thought that they were doing it wrong, you could just sort of go west and start over. And there might have been a lot of sacrifice to do that, but it was an option.
Mm-hmm.
And if things got bad enough, you could do that. And we're sort of out of space. There's nowhere to go west anymore. You can't escape. Every piece of land is dictated by some government in some way. There's nowhere to go. And because of that, it's a lot harder to run experiments. It's a lot harder to try new things. It's a lot harder to, like what I was describing earlier, instead of like cherry picking, oh, this worked for those guys. It's actually interesting. You can see it in the Middle East quite a bit. They're pretty open to shopping around the world, figuring out what works the best, and then importing that.
Yep.
And that's partly on how they do infrastructure and partly on how they do governance and societal stuff. Not completely, but there's clear evidence of that. Singapore is another example where they sort of cherry-picked the things that were working elsewhere.
And they're willing to experiment.
And they're willing to experiment.
I mean, within the confines of the autocratic system, they have at least the willingness to try out stuff. And that is something where the West is the most amorphous collective description ever, is failing. And that is one of the things where we always assumed that democracy and freedom of speech and all the other freedoms is a prerequisite for commercial success.
Yeah.
And what these nations are teaching us now is that that is not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
You can live off the world's black money easily and be very successful. Or you can be an infrastructure up in a region that doesn't have great infrastructure and be successful even while not being democratic. And even while not having LGBT rights, you can do that.
Yeah.
Which also means that the story of the West, in a sense,
is eroded.
Has eroded and needs to be reinvented.
Yes.
So basically, we need to make sure that we come up with new narratives and tell people, okay, it's not just maybe we are not way more commercially successful than you in your autocracy, but we may be more happier. But we are at the moment not.
Dubai and Singapore, they're run like companies.
Yeah.
They basically have CEOs.
Yeah.
They're run like companies. They basically cherry-picked the best thing from an autocracy, which is another word for like how we run a company.
Yeah.
And they cherry-picked the best things from democracy and capitalism, and they've implemented those things. And they're thriving in a way. But you could say they're the last places that anyone went west. Like those are both places built in the last 60 years.
In a way,
but
what it essentially means is that the West needs to reinvent itself ethically, morally, and give itself another narrative that is not just economic success. Especially the Valley is really bad at that. I mean, the Valley is basically saying, "Hey, look how commercially successful we are. We
Yeah.
are the Googles, we are the Microsofts." So,
We suck at everything else.
and but then when you then go there and you meet people who make 300K per year, and they could not find a decent place to live and
Yeah.
not a kindergarten for their kids.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, okay, are you more happy than I'm in Berlin? No, you're not. So
It's been amazing
yeah.
visiting Saudi Arabia lately
Uh-huh.
because Americans including me, have just a very cartoon version of Saudi Arabia in
Yeah.
our heads because we weren't allowed to go forever. But so much has advanced and it's changing so fast. And the most interesting thing is the societies. Like they really have tight-knit family values. There's nobody drinking. There's no drugs. There's no crime.
Come
like
on.
for obviously different reasons.
They're drinking like mad there.
Okay, there's
just
some
not
drinking.
publicly.
Yeah, there's some
no,
drinking, yeah.
I mean, it's yeah.
It's
Yeah.
moonshine. They got moonshine.
No,
I know there's parties,
yeah,
but
yeah.
the point is there's a
Yeah.
overall, like it's relatively
On the surface, it's a society that is on the surface more aligned with the postulated values. But if you look behind it, then you see that people want their freedom to misbehave,
yeah
and they look for that. And the more draconian the punishment is, the deeper underground they go. What strikes me most there, especially in Dubai, is the optimism.
yeah
We know I will have a better life than my parents,
yeah
and my kids will have a better life than I had.
yeah.
And this is not the case in the West anymore.
That's right.
And this is the fundamental difference, and this is something that needs to change.
Yeah, they
So
can't see it.
So this is
Yeah.
something that really needs to change.
Yeah,
And even if this optimism is unfounded there, because they will be uninhabitable in 20 years, which could be very well be, they have their plan B. They bought
Yeah.
large chunks of Egypt to resettle the population if needed. This whole basically making plausible narrative many people that their life will be better because the tendency is going to be better.
yeah,
This is absolutely missing in the West, and this is what needs to be changed
yeah,
in order to get all the positive effects of that. This is also why when you look at immigrants in the US, those people are more optimistic than the average American I know, because they know they will have a better life. They know they have come
Yeah.
to a land
right.
where when they work hard,
For sure.
they have a reasonable chance to
Yeah.
have a better life.
They just want to have the life that we have now,
So
and we're pissed off because we're not getting the life that we thought we were gonna.
yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a relative thing.
Now,
What about, when you look around Europe, I don't know if this is something you give much thought to, but like, what other parts of Europe are exciting to you? Like, where's things happening?
a lot of the interesting stuff is happening on the fringes. So in places like Estonia,
Yeah.
like in places like Slovenia, Croatia, Portugal, for some, the smaller, more agile countries that have understood that they need to do something
Okay.
in order to stay relevant or become relevant.
Yeah.
Have you seen the ex-prime minister of Estonia here, ex-president of Estonia? They also have impressive politicians, some of them. Other places are getting really dark. Hungary getting really difficult. Other places moving to the right, so don't know what will happen with France now.
Yeah.
Europe is in a very critical frame of time at this point. And Germany as well. In Germany, we had, at the elections, we had basically over 25% Nazis. So that's not good. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. What's the impression of the UK?
They will take a long time until they become relevant again. Maybe they get together after elections, but with Brexit, they actually at least amputated the foot, and that unnecessarily so. And they have been there recently, and it's kind of massively depressing.
Yeah.
London stinking of sewage, and people not caring for the infrastructure at all. So like at all.
Yeah.
That was kind of hard to see.
What do you think is next for the CCC? Is there something that you have an ambition or hope to see happen, or is it...
So we have a lot of political fights currently going on. One of them is what's called chat control in Europe, where they want to install CSAM detecting algorithms on everybody's phones that are being used before messages are being sent.
Yeah.
We're fighting against that. There are other initiatives to try to get around encryption. So this is
If you had to pick
larger political fights,
somebody to read all your text messages,
Yeah.
would you pick Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, or P. Diddy?
None of them. That's
basically what the chat control is about.
Yeah,
though.
so it's none of their fucking business. This is one of the big problems, is that politicians have this urge to control. And even if you talk to law enforcement and ask them, okay, do you want this? And they say, hell no, we don't want even more false positives.
Yeah.
Which they get all the time
Yeah.
already from Facebook. And they say we have more than 90% false positives. And we don't even bother marking most because it's so obvious. And so the idea that the government has the right to read everybody's communication is ridiculous. Yeah. So and this is something that we fight against again and again. And it's an ongoing set of battles. So the arguments are even the same when, like in the first crypto wars.
It ought to just be so obvious to people that they do not want this. Even if you think if you love the government that you have now and think they're going to do a great job of taking care of you, just remember the next election, the other assholes are going to win, and they're going to be the ones.
And that's our immediate future.
Yep.
That's something where in Germany we have, it's maybe now like 5 years until these people come to power.
Yeah.
So, and I don't want to give them the tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Any questions for me?
I'm interested always in what you think what will be the next big thing.
I think it's a fair question. I work on things on average, I'd say like a decade before they get commercialized in a meaningful way, or hit a hype cycle, I should say.
Yeah.
And I feel pretty strongly that once something gets there, it doesn't need my help. So I try to go work on other things. But the things I see coming that I'm excited about, just because we're at this point where computation has made a lot of things possible that weren't before. I think it kind of rewrites everything. I could give a shit about computers chatting. I mean, I'm kind of over it. But what's been great is that because they've been able to learn language, they've convinced everybody that there's something to this machine learning stuff. And so now we're getting billions and billions thrown at computation. And so we're getting this massive growth in computational ability. And to me, that's exciting because it just opens up what's possible. We're going into a zetaflop world like this year.
Yeah.
And we're going to be able to do things like make computational models for your actual brain, for everything in your body, the cells in your body. We're going to be able to just model the climate in a meaningful way. And we have the best toolkit ever to do that. And it's just going to help us to squeeze extreme efficiency out of things that we never could optimize before. And that's basically everything. It's every industry. The way we make cars and trains and planes, the way we build houses, the way we make clothes, the way we do shipping, the way we grow food, the way we do everything. We should be reinventing that right now.
Haven't we squeezed out
No.
the optimization?
No, we did. We squeezed the optimization we could with the toolkit we had, and our toolkit was very limited.
So what I'm wondering was a lot of the optimization went into making stuff shittier.
Yeah, that's right.
So
We optimized for, we had to, the first order optimization is cost.
Yeah.
And so you throw every other thing under the bus when you optimize for cost, solely for cost. And so you can see that happen with food. We're eating a lot of shitty food because it's the cheapest food we can make, stuff like that. But when the marginal cost of making food goes to zero, you could start to optimize for nutrition and flavor and other things that you value, health. And we're getting to the point where I think we'll be able to do that with a lot of things. And again, I don't think it's a panacea. I'm not sure that you can count on the existing industries to make these improvements. A lot of them are going to go down kicking and screaming. I'll give you an example. We have a company that is making these cargo ships, and they're autonomous like a Tesla, and they're sailing in the wind. So they have no crew, no fuel, and no emissions. Cargo ships today are basically optimized for carbon emissions. They're burning nasty bunker oil. It's the cheapest gas you can get. They're basically twice the emissions of air travel. I think their entire mission is to bring Happy Meal toys from China to Los Angeles. So this is a shitty fucking industry, and they are not going to improve it. There's maritime emissions standards. They just keep pushing them out. They have no idea how to make a zero emissions ship. They're not trying. They're just going to go down kicking and screaming. But we don't need them. If we can make a drone that does cargo, that has no emissions and has no fuel cost, then we just use the Uber playbook. And we don't fix the old industry, we build a new industry. And that's what's possible. And I think that is a good example of what I expect to happen in a lot of industries. And that's why I'm so excited about deep tech right now. I'm so excited about industrial technology that can give us a 10x, 100x multiplier in these old industries. We can go with that kind of a advantage on cost. We can go re-engineer the entire industry for everything we care about. And so to me, that's what's possible. And you still have to go find the cracks. You have to find a jurisdiction that doesn't have the regulatory capture. You have to.
Yeah, okay, but the problem is that in the past, this disruption was often just jurisdiction laundering. So basically just like Uber circumventing labor laws, delegating risk to their drivers, and disguising it as marvelous software, which was just
that's a very German way of describing Uber, and it's totally fair. But those are developmental stages that Uber has to go through because we haven't learned to contain it. But Uber is fucking better than taxis as a service, as a product. And taxis, any taxi company in the world could have made an iPhone app, and none of them did. That's why I'm pissed off.
So what's actually happening in Germany now is that the taxi companies make decent smartphone apps.
Yeah.
And
forced by the hand of Uber.
In a way.
Yeah.
So in a way, they improve their service, and they're getting more reliable and sometimes even cheaper, at least cheaper than Uber search
I'm totally
pricing.
for that.
So the interesting question was this deep tech disruption innovation. I'm all for it. By the way,
use the Uber playbook. Uber brought no technology.
Yeah, they were not really a technology company, but the real technology stuff is the really interesting thing. What I'm really interested in is how to pick industries where there could be real leverage in bringing in new technology.
Yeah, I picked them all. I just picked them all. That's my way.
Okay, okay.
Because you don't know how you're going to die.
So
by the
way, this container shipping thing. Have you seen this? That
there's 3 cabals in shipping. We're going to get assassinated by one of them.
The interesting thing is that the container shipping industry has been doing thermal geoengineering accidentally the last decades.
Yeah, right.
And now that we forced them to go sulfur-free, we basically caused a termination shock.
Yeah, I know.
Which is one of the things where I thought, okay, we need more simulation power.
Yep, exactly right. I'm totally with you. I'm totally with you. Yeah, we had these inventions for geoengineering that were,
So why isn't that happening? Why is nobody really picking up on geoengineering? I mean,
we started in 2007 when it was a dirty word for sure, never taken seriously. But all the ideas cost like $1 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
And so we showed some ideas that were so cheap you couldn't ignore them as a way of getting geoengineering a seat at the table. So now people kind of pay it lip service, but nobody will take it seriously. And I think that this is another one of these things where humans are just very poor decision-making organisms when they do it in groups. Yeah. They don't want to go on the data. They want to go on their gut feeling. Mm-hmm. And their gut feeling is that, like,
don't mess with nature.
Don't mess with nature. And guess what? The reason
already.
You exist is because we're messing with nature.
Yeah. So do you think humans will come around to recognizing that we live in a managed ecosystem and that we need to learn to manage it better?
Yeah, I do think they will, but I think it'll take generations. Yeah. These things it's so hard to change. You basically described the problem several times in different ways of describing Germany's challenges and what they need to change and their government and policy and things, grumbling each time about how long it probably is going to take. But when you look at that for humanity, it's going to take generations. We've got to raise kids that don't have the same hang-ups as we do. We're doing a good job of raising kids that think they care about the environment. I think that's definitely improved. That wasn't a thing when I was a
Yeah.
kid too much. Save the Whales was a thing, but that was the
That's
extent of it.
about it. Yeah.
I think there's a lot that will change over the course of a couple generations that we can't imagine changing in our life.
Especially on atomic geoengineering, now that we know that it has worked. Basically, half a degree that we got shaved off,
Yeah.
that is now coming in within a year, basically. Somebody will
So there's
start it. I mean,
there's a couple really good ideas.
yeah.
The ones I favor do put sulfur dioxide in the stratosphere. It floats around for quite a while, a year or so, before it
Yeah.
rains out. You do get some acid rain out of it.
The cheapest way would be basically to say, okay, the shipping industry can use sulfur again.
Well, that would, it would be cheapest. Yeah, that is true. These other ones aren't expensive.
Yeah.
Like putting sulfur dioxide in the stratosphere, we could basically get Arctic ice conditions back to pre-industrial levels for probably $50, $100 million a year
Mm-hmm.
for the whole planet.
Yeah.
You'd reduce the atmospheric temperature by 1 or 2 degrees everywhere doing that. People don't like the idea. You can't stop doing it once you start until
Right.
you've replaced all the energy with non-carbon emitting energy. So it might take a century to stop.
Yeah,
But so what?
what?
It's basically
Yeah.
it's basically sunglasses for Earth.
Yeah.
So I like that idea. There's an interesting one that we could do that's like a little more friendly in people's minds, which is you stick a device on the ship that just aerosolizes seawater.
Mm-hmm.
So you get your cloud seeding, you're basically making
Yeah.
white trails, you're making entrails behind the ships everywhere they go, but there's enough boats out there that you would get, you do a more intense effect than what the fuel was doing inadvertently,
Mm-hmm.
burning fuel. And you would basically just be putting water over the ocean. So hardly anybody, you would hope, would
Yeah.
complain about that. And so that's one way that you could sort of get part of the way there. Yeah, we definitely need to do these things, but yeah, we're going to have to come up with something a little better than reality TV politics to
Yeah.
get the job done.